Okay, this is CPS Folio 1 video presentation. Let's get into it. So, week 1 observation. In response to the theme of observation for week 1, I wrote a short story, spoken word song. I guess you could use it as lyrics to a song, with a focus on people watching from the eye of a storyteller, taking the mundane and making a narrative of it. By observing the lamp and the inspiration I gathered from the surrounding area and the effect it had on me, I showed that a simple image can spark an entire narrative and setting with themes on social expectations and behavior. So, this story was inspired by a lamp down the road from where I live. It's the only lamp of its kind on this particular street. It's a very old looking, kind of Parisian, I guess, style lamp that immediately sparked like a sense of inspiration in me for like old kind of booze hound kind of Tom Waits music. My related work for this is actually similar work which has been produced by Tom Waits, whose song Frank's Wild Years explores this theme by commenting on the domestication of the contemporary human and the rejection of those social expectations. So if I just click on this short story, obviously I'm not going to read the whole thing out here, but it's basically a story about some not degenerates, but some people hang around outside of a bar, and the narrative kind of goes to an unexpected place. But it was very much inspired by the work of Tom Waits and Frank's Wild Years, which the audio probably isn't coming through here, but yeah, the link is available in this set of slides. So moving on to week 2, the tinkering theme. In response to the theme of tinkering, I produced a pixel art portrait illustration using the Pixakai app for iPad. I never used this software before, and I don't really do pixel art that much. So by experimenting with software I have never used in a medium I am a novice in, I showed that there is a potential in my illustration to take on a more pop art feel and expression. I believe this aesthetic could potentially come full circle and influence my future illustration work to appear more vector-like and cartoony. And just on the right here we see kind of the process. I've just sketched out the line art for the kind of character, the level of detail I wanted to try and implement in pixel art. The stuff I used for reference for this was really helpful in my related work, which is by Paul Robertson, who is a pixel artist who has done pixel art for many things, but most notable, I guess, of recent infamy was the Scott Pilgrim game and the show Gravity Falls. As an artist who normally uses a lot of gradients and soft kind of brushes when I color and work, his use of color theory and the way that he creates shading out of, blocky pixel brushes was really helpful when I was trying to go through this process of creating this work. As I said before, I'm not a pixel artist, so this was definitely something new for me. I'm okay, kind of happy with the overall result, but I think, as I said in the text, the thing that it kind of inspires me the most about this is moving forward. It kind of gives me ideas on techniques that I can transfer to my own work, like thicker line art, and maybe even kind of doing some more harder shading in my work. Week 3, found objects. In response to the theme of found objects, I made a song using found objects around the house mixed with traditional instrumentation. By experimenting with everyday objects and discovering interesting and unique sounds within them, I showed that these objects can help inspire and direct your creativity in new, unique, and strange ways. This can help with bouts of artist writer's block and also open your mind to new possibilities outside your usual approach to creating music. Similar work has been produced by Tom Waits, whose work Swordfish Trombones explores this theme by experimenting with everyday items to create hellish yet still melodic tones and melodies in his music. This work took his career in a new direction and inspired a new approach to music production. So if I just play the track now, maybe as I play it, I can kind of list what things I used. So the percussion we're hearing is actually my car keys and a deodorant can, which I'm just spraying kind of around the mic to get that hissing sound. The vocals are actually done by my cat, just meowing with a bunch of echo and reverb, and it's finished off with some traditional instrumentation, very much in a Tom Waits mold, just some crunchy guitar and some actual samples of real drums in there. So just like a short little experiment, but I think it came out kind of cool. There's also one guitar overdub on there, but yeah, I think it's 3 to 3. It's an even amount of found objects than traditional instrumentation in that one. Just to show the related works and Tom Waits. Once again, I don't know, there's probably an audio coming through for this, but this is actually a video of him kind of showing the experimental nature of how he gets percussion. Kind of banging away on poles and gates and anything you can use to kind of create interesting percussion. There's also footage of him playing live. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of good shots of the second percussion guy, but there's actually a second guy playing like lead pipes and drums in the background, right at the back there behind the drums. Earlier in the song, I think he uses the seat of the piano for percussion. And then once again at the end, I think he's just bashing the actual piano just to get any kind of sound out of it. It's just that desperate search for sound, anything to like extend or create like a unique identity to his sound, which is the same kind of mood I was going for in my experiments that week. So moving on to week 4, place. In response to the theme of place, I wrote a short story focused on isolation, environment, and the human condition. By writing a story so heavily focused on a character's environment and how it can affect their mental state, I showed that place can be one of the key bases to narrative and character development in a story. Although the idea was originally inspired by the introduction of Rey in Star Wars The Force Awakens, I think a better example of character study in isolation as a related work would be Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation. The film explores similar themes to that of my short story this week, with the connection between loneliness and place being paramount to the character's mental state and overall narrative. So once again, this is another short story, so there's not much to show. The link is just to the Magi site, but it's basically a short story about a post-apocalyptic or post-war setting in which a man kind of lives in fear in an abandoned ship or submarine, and kind of something happens in order for him to kind of push the narrative forward and have to leave the safety, the mental safety of the submarine. Lost in Translation deals with similar themes in loneliness and isolation. There's the screenshot here is taken from one of the scenes I wanted to use as an example in the link, which is just one of the characters kind of alone in this huge city with this view of the difference between kind of the outside world and their inner world. And but the scene that I've got is almost as good. It's definitely not a horrible ad for God, grey hair. But yeah, I always thought the scene was kind of interesting because it's essentially something that people normally do in a couple or with friends, which is kind of visiting the touristy spots in a place like Japan, but ultimately the sense of foreignness and her isolated kind of lonely feeling just makes her seem more disconnected and more of like an outsider than I guess she would normally feel. And once again, it's the contradiction of this huge open empty space with just this single person kind of studiously living in it, and there's this really pervasive sense of detachment throughout this scene and the whole film as a whole. And that's really the same kind of feeling that I was going for in the short story that I made, although in my example it kind of turns into a toxic mental state, whereas I guess Lost in Translation is kind of about finding friendship in weird places, but that's not really what we're focused on. Week 5, object-orientated ontology. In response to the theme of object-orientated ontology, I made a storyboard concerned with creating a mood and narrative in the absence of human subjectivity. By focusing on the post-party setting, the viewer is flushed with the feelings of bittersweet nostalgia. The life and joy of the party that once was is now barren, abandoned, and empty. Similar work has been produced by Scenic Simpsons, whose work examining empty compositions of early Simpsons episodes shows how narrative and emotion can be suggested without characters or humanoid forms. So this one's really interesting. I really enjoy the idea of an abandoned party or bar. So the night before there was life and there was joy and there were people there, and now it's just empty, and just looking at it without people, and it's just this bittersweet feeling of kind of nostalgia for the night before. And I think there's just something kind of like beautiful and somber about that. And the trickle of fluid and just following that from the drink to the cat drinking on the floor just gives you an excuse really to look at different compositions and different shots of this environment and just kind of think about it, ruminate on it, and the way that it all kind of, the impact it has on you when you look at it. So the Scenic Simpsons stuff is very similar. It's that sense of like creating a mood, or even possible narratives without any characters or with few characters, and these shots create a very similar feeling of like barren emptiness, and there's something kind of sad and bittersweet about it. The kind of strange art style of The Simpsons kind of lends itself to once again this kind of bittersweet detached feeling. Like it suddenly feels a lot more lonely, and that's something that I found like a kinship with when I was thinking about this created work. So just in reflection for my conclusion, the main reflection I take away from the last 5 weeks of CPS work is the realization that I am often drawn to human psychology and how that influences narrative and my personal creative process. Looking at the works created, the thread running through all of them is the human condition, be it loneliness and isolation in the submarine short story, frustration and liberation in the pixel art tickering or the found objects music, rebellion, chaos, depravity, and hedonism in the lamp short story, and sobering, somber nostalgia in the object-orientated ontology example we just spoke on. Well, I think this may have been ever present in my previous creative ventures. This process has helped me to understand part of the creative ritual, which in itself can at times be a confusing exercise in patience and experimentation. Knowing that what I'm searching for is often centered around the themes of human psychology and its relationship with other objects and places in the world gives me a new viewpoint when analyzing my own methods and process. So yeah, it's just about moving forward. I've kind of got a clearer idea on things that I take motivation and inspiration from. I don't want to be working on things that I have, where that my interest is kind of superficial, or I'm doing it to kind of satisfy, I don't know, a brief or something. There has to be something there for me to really get what I want out of it, and I feel like this has helped me kind of discover that. So yeah, I think that just about does it. Thank you.